Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, one and all, to this, the Cult Movie Podcast, Cult Potato. As always, I am your ever-faithful host, Campion, and joining me is, of course, my ever-faithful co-host, Mr. Grady Hooker. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I am good, and I got called ever faithful instead of an insult today, so maybe that's because I indulged you and let you do Ghost in the Shell.
I frequently call you ever faithful. I frequently use that for the episodes.
It still also has an insult usually attached to it.
It's usually not an insult. It's usually just something weird that I tack on just to get the ball rolling, to really get us in the mood for recording a podcast.
And this time instead you had an anime movie, so you don't need to get in the mood. You're raring and ready to go, because you got to watch anime this week.
Well, it's more like I got home late and I forgot what I wrote down for for the introduction today. So I'll find it after the episode and I'll save it for next week.
I was giving you a nice cover, Campion, but let's talk about Ghost in the Shell. Not the live action one either.
And not one of the other, because there's been multiple Ghost in the Shell movies. There's been, it's a big franchise. There've been, video games, OVAs. Originally, this all started with a manga. However, the most famous entry is, of course, the original 1995 film, just simply titled Ghost in the Shell, I believe, directed by, listen to me butcher Japanese names, Mamoru Oshii.
I can't help you. I'm going to let you fail on that ship on your own. I got nothing when it comes to Japanese name pronouncing.
You and me both. Released in 1995, and it would later see 18th of November 1995. Sorry, and it would see a global release in early December that very same year. Which for anime films of the time is very that usually didn't happen. Usually you'd wait years and years for it to get dubbed into English, and then you'd usually see it on a VHS bootleg. But whereas this got a proper theatrical release, so yeah, real coming out swinging with this film.
And it was an interesting one because obviously 1995, the year I was born, I wasn't watching a whole lot of anime when I came slipping on out the womb. But
you're younger than me.
This wasn't anything I'd ever gone back and watched. It wasn't anything that was on TV, but it felt like, I guess, the Western, first sort of mainstream Western anime kind of thing, where I totally got the vibe it was going for. I'll get into my negatives about the movie later on, but it just had that aura of really early stuff. You could start seeing the genre sort of evolving off of this.
Yeah. And it wasn't the first anime movie, first piece of anime to really make, a big splash in the West. There have been smaller ones before, but I'm pretty sure, I don't have the exact date on me, but I know Akira, that's that's the big one, the one that's just hey, this is what anime is, you should watch it kind of thing.
I think that would be 1988, as it may or may not be on the schedule.
Yes. It's 1988. I think that's the release date for the original Japanese version. Don't know when the English version came out.
Gotcha.
No clue. So, but I'm pretty sure it predates Ghost in the Shell. But Ghost in the Shell was one of the, the really big ones to be hey, this is really good. You should watch this. This is what anime is. It's crazy. And Ghost in the Shell is something that's very, very influential on a number of different directors. Just doing a bit of background research into this. The Wachowskis, the creators of The Matrix, heavily influenced by this film. Something they're very open about.
Oh,
and
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, watching the opening text call, and you literally see the green code scrolling past. It's just oh. Okay, so no, they literally just took that and they said, yeah, let's just do that. Let's just use that. That's cool. So,
yeah, I read that the Wachowskis actually had to ask permission to to make the elements they did, because it was just so similar that they were like so worried about a lawsuit. They actually asked permission of the creators of Ghost in the Shell, this film here, to make sure that it was okay that they used those elements, because the text scroll and stuff, it's fine. There's a lot of stuff that coming out of the liquid pods, the putting cables into the back of the neck. There's a lot of similarities between this and the Matrix.
Yeah. And I think the Wachowskis have been quoted that they consider their films as sort of like a spiritual successor to Ghost in the Shell. And after sitting through multiple scenes of people quoting Bible verses and philosophy at me, I'm willing to agree, Grady.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess early question, just while we're at the top of the episode, did you watch the English version or did you watch the Japanese version of this movie?
I watched the original English dub. I'm aware that it did see a re-release with a different cast, which as far as I can tell, has actually received more praise, is considered to be a bit better than the original, but I went back and watched the original one. What about you?
Alright, so we are on the same page. I also watched the original English dub on this one as well, from 1995.
I think this I think it was Ghost in the Shell 2.0, I think is the re-released version, where they had some updated 3D special effects. They changed out some of the voice cast, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that one, and I don't think you've seen it either, have you?
No, I haven't seen any other Ghost in the Shell literature, movies, TV shows, anything. This was my first experience in that Ghost in the Shell world. My partner, who I was watching this with, had seen the live-action Scarlett Johansson one, and has told me that I now have to watch that.
I completely forgot they made that.
I've been told now that I have to watch that version, because, in their words, it's better.
Really? Because I have heard the exact opposite from pretty much everyone who's seen that movie.
Look, I got a lot of negative notes about this anime movie here, Campion, that we will eventually get to.
I figured that you would. I figured that you would, because this I knew this going into this film, but it's a very dense film, and from the sounds of it, it sounds like you had a more negative opinion of this movie than I do.
Neutral to negative.
I overall, I'll admit that it did have a few issues, but I overall really liked this movie. But it sounds like we may not be on the same page of that.
That's good, right? The best podcast episodes we've done have come out of one of us liking the film and one of us not. So we're not just constantly shitting on a movie, or we're not just constantly talking up this movie. It is a bit of a debate, per se.
Oh, just wait till we get to Atlantis, dude. That's that's gonna be a fun one.
The first thing I actually thought when you'd sent me this movie, you're like, Ghost in the Shell, that's what we're watching. I'm like, okay. I put it on the TV, I sit down, I get my little popcorn, I get snuggled up on the couch next to my partner, and the amount of titties in this movie.
Yes. I probably should have... I knew about that going in, I probably should have warned you about that.
I was like, have you sent me a hentai? Is that what we're watching today?
That's okay. Okay. A little bit of nipple does not mean hentai, Grady, okay? That is completely different.
There was a character that spent 20% of their screen time nude. That's all.
Yes, there is a reason for that. It's, okay, you get this when you look at a lot of cyberpunk kind of works, especially ones with like a heavy transhumanist kind of bent to them, where the naked human form, like especially once you have like cybernetics and you start dealing with people who can like shift, like when you're dealing with like identity and stuff like that, the naked human form just stops being an issue in those sorts of movies, because the whole thing is like, oh, this is so far in the future, and you know what a human is has changed so much, the naked human form just isn't an issue anymore.
Yeah, I definitely understood why. I thought it was funny that you did send me a movie with a lot of naked anime characters in it.
Yes.
But hey, it was fine. A little bit of nipple never hurt anybody.
And to be fair, a lot of those scenes, and to be fair, okay, if we're being honest, it's just the female nipple, Grady. That's it. I have seen anime
the
that
most
is
worst
exponentially
kind of
worse.
nipple. Okay, it is the worst nipple. We must immediately expunge anything from the internet that contains the female nipple.
Okay,
Sorry, I went
okay,
into Twitch mode there for a second. Sorry.
Okay, if I went back, Grady, and I re-edited this movie where I just took pictures of male nipples and pasted them over the female ones, would that be better?
Let me consult the Twitch terms of service. Yes, it would be.
Okay. And to be fair, like, most of the scenes with the nipples in it are kind of, like it's kind of playing into hey, this is where it's trying to play up that it's a bit up, like what they're kind of, like the scene where they bring in the I can't remember whether it was just I think it was a gynoid, or like a female android, and not a and not a. It wasn't a cyborg, was it? The one halfway through the movie, like the one where it's like getting ripped apart and it's like opening up its body and stuff. That was pretty,
Yeah.
That leans heavily. What I'm trying to say is they do play with the human form, and they really try to lean into like the uncanny valley. It's like, oh, look at the f***ed up shit we're doing with it. Like that scene at the end when the Major really starts, overtaxing her cybernetics, and her body just starts ripping into pieces while she's nude. So it's like even more f***ed up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I am totally okay with it. I was playing a lovely devil's advocate role, and I wanted to mention titties to start off the show, and we've spent a good 5 minutes talking about them.
It's best to get that out of the way. That, and with the okay, because this movie throws a lot of philosophy at you, and in reading about this movie, the people who really like this movie also throw a lot of philosophy at you. So that's the kind of headspace my brain is in right now. It's like, okay, hang on, I took a philosophy 101 class. Let's see what I can dig out of my brain to remember about that.
Look, before I go completely negative about this film, what's something that you enjoyed, or what's like a positive comment you have about this movie? Or your overall opinion?
That the animation in this movie is top-notch gorgeous. I adored it immensely.
Yeah, I do have to agree with that. I think the art style and everything looked cool. The signs, the areas, the sort of background stuff was all neat and tidy. The character design was cool. I can't really fault anything that visually you saw on screen, really.
Yeah. Visually, it's a very stunning movie. Especially since, like, for me personally, that's sort of like mid to late 90s anime art style, like, kind of aesthetic. I absolutely adore that kind of stuff. Stuff like, Cowboy Bebop and Trigun. That sort of stuff, I adore anime that look like that. I think that's because that was at sort of the tail end of when, of like cell-drawn animation, before they started to make the hard switch to purely digital. It's kind of at a point where technology was still really good, and people had refined the techniques and stuff, but they were still doing it hand-drawn, so it looks different. I don't quite know how to explain it, but there's something very different between an animation that's hand-drawn and something that's drawn digitally on a computer. Okay, they're both hand-drawn. I mean, cell animation and digital is probably what I should have said.
Look, we get what you're sort of talking about, and I think we do have to agree, the visual style, as much as I am about to rag on other portions of the movie, the visual style I will not be touching.
Yes. I think a high point for this is like all of the different like mechanical and cybernetic parts of the film, which like just the meticulous way that the machinery is animated, especially during that opening sequence where we see the gynoid being produced, and how like all the little bits and pieces on its exoskeleton sort of being put together. I love that kind of stuff, and it's great because I think this film actually did have, because for films like this they often have like separate people who work on purely the mechanical aspects of the movie. So if they have like heavy amounts of like machinery, giant robots is another one. They usually have someone who specifically deals with just that. Like that's where their skill set lies. And even in this film, they have someone. It says in the opening credits they had someone dedicated just to designing like the guns for the film. Like that's it. That's all they did. They just designed like the guns and weaponry and stuff. and I think it really shines through with how like meticulously designed all of that is and how realistic it looks. Like they even had like a firearms consultant, like someone who's like an expert in firearms, to make sure they got it as accurate as they could for the movie. So yeah,
I'll give them thumbs up for all of that stuff. Obviously, as you say, the mechanical elements are pretty cool, and for me, the big point of that is when the Major is ripping off the top of that tank, and you do see the muscles and the mechanics and everything just sort of peeling off and snapping, and it's a pretty grotesque scene, and it's not the only grotesque scene in this movie, but
there's a few of them.
Yeah, I saw at least 2 heads explode.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Granny. Okay, Grady, let me have it. What did you not like about this film? I can take it, Grady. Come on.
The slow zooms. Look,
I'm going to need you to elaborate on that, because that didn't really bother me, so I do need you to sort of elaborate on that for me.
I don't know what last night Grady was thinking. He just wrote, F the slow zooms. I think there was just one too many scenes where it just sat. A classic old anime technique, right? To add movement to the scene when nothing's actually happening, and you just slow zoom in on a face and do nothing.
Yeah. Especially since for a lot of those animation, it's... hang on, I'm actually scrolling through the movie now, and it's especially since it's just... I get what you're saying. I don't think it's that old thing of where it's like a digital zoom where they just take the picture and they just artificially enlarge it, but I do sort of get what you're saying there.
Alright, he's scrolled, he's found all the zooms. Okay, that was the least egregious thing I had about this film. Alright, I have a couple quotes here that I actually said during the film, and one of my partners said, write that down, so that I could say it here on the show, and the first of which was, oh my god, nothing has happened in this movie, but there's only 20 minutes left.
Yeah, it is a rather kind of slow-paced film that's especially with the kind of reputation that a lot of these old anime tend to have. You kind of expect something a bit more, fast-paced and action-packed. Even if it's not constant like action and violence, you expect, stuff to just be happening, whether it's, really snappy dialogue or the plots moving forward. But I do get what you mean, that for a lot of this film, it's just people sitting around and talking, not really moving the plot along. They're just kind of shooting the shit about philosophy and with a lot of Bible quotations thrown in.
Yeah, I've got lots of just nothing, even earlier up in my notes, and that was probably 20 minutes into the movie. There, as you say, just lots of scenes of just nothing. There's no action, there's no point. Like, the plot of this movie, the movie IRL in the world could be like 20 minutes long in terms of how long it took. And the plot is thin, alright? I think the best parts of this movie, or when people talk about the plot of this movie and they say they absolutely loved it, is, as you say, the reading between the lines, philosophical, people trying to figure out how it applies and asking themselves those questions. Nobody is sitting here going, this plot on the surface level is amazing, because there is none.
I would disagree with you there. A lot of the plot and characterization... surface level, it is reading between the lines, but I would actually say that because I do actually have a few problems with this film's plot, but for me it's the exact opposite. I think that it's just too dense. Like, it is a really dense movie. Just a lot of stuff happening, a lot of things being said, and it's difficult to really properly process what's going on. Whereas, okay, if you look at the actual plot itself, like the actual story beats, there isn't happening, but then they just go ahead and they throw a lot of things in there. Like, a major plot point throughout the movie is our main character, Major Makoto Kusanagi. Her whole plot is that she is sort of she's having a bit of an existential crisis, not like a massive full on breakdown about it, but she is having problems with who she is, like, as a human being. And I think but the way that it says it's a lot of the ways that this film deals with the stuff is a very much, it somehow manages to do show don't tell, and telling everything and not showing everything. It does both of them at the same time, which, by the way, The Matrix also did.
Oh yeah, I have the same problems.
Yes, The Matrix did the same thing.
They really took that and learned, and they were like, hey, we're going to take this aspect and we're going to do it.
What if we only did that? What if that was the whole movie? What if we did 3 movies? What if we did 4 movies of that? And actually, the animated series is fine. It's actually really good. But what if you did 4 movies of that, Grady?
Yeah, it would be rough, is what the answer is.
But I think a point where that's done really well in the movie, like the whole show don't tell thing, is the scene where the Major is taking a boat ride into headquarters, and you see her just, it's a very slow, methodical scene of her just taking this boat ride through. It's in Hong Kong, right? Like, I'm pretty sure it's Hong Kong, right?
I don't know where it's set, sorry.
Okay. I remember reading something that it's heavily based on Hong Kong, but I don't know if it actually is set in that city, but I'll have to look it up later. But, editing Grady, put that in. Put that bit of trivia in here.
Ghost in the Shell was filmed in Wellington's Stone Street Studios. I think that's the live-action version.
I think it's also a live-action one, Grady.
Give me a second. Hong Kong. Heavily based on.
I like it because you can kind of see her kind of having that internal struggle of her own identity as she's constantly running into people who look exactly like her, because the whole thing is that she's like this isn't what her original body looked like. Like, most of her body has been replaced with cybernetics at this point, and it's very much like a stock model with a lot of enhancements underneath. In fact, she happens to pass by an office by a woman who looks exactly like her. You see mannequins that look exactly like her with her face on it, and it has this really haunting song playing over it as well. For me, that's because I really like the slow-paced, methodical kind of stuff in movies. I really love it when a film just stops just to kind of navel gaze about how deep it is. I don't know. I love that kind of stuff. Well, love and hate. I like it when it's done well, and I think it's done well here. But the scene where that boat ride for me is honestly my favorite part of the entire movie.
Yeah, it's a pretty good scene for sure, and I think that whole aspect around, the Major's internal struggle, that is the movie, to me, like what I could see on first viewing. My other quote I have is that if I have to have a YouTuber explain it to me, then the film didn't do very well. But luckily, I think in this case, the YouTuber just took a bit of manga knowledge and a bit of other world knowledge and put pieces together. Yeah. Like, you can tell, obviously, the basic stuff going around with the movie. There's just like a few things where, unless you watched it a couple times or you knew stuff about the world and knew exactly what you were watching, like, supposedly the live action film does this a little bit better. In this time, almost everybody is augmented. Everybody has some mechanical part of them. And so in the live action, the people you walk by on the streets all have the more obvious cybernetics, like cyberpunk, what you'd expect. And then here I had to have a YouTuber tell me that so I could, figure it out.
Yeah. I think that in that case it is because, and I think this is why you might like the live action more, and why people who prefer the original, have a real bee in their bond about it, is because the original movie was intended. It appeals to like a very specific kind of person, and whereas the live action one was sort of made with more of a, because it's a big budget Hollywood production, so they want to make it more appealing for the general audience. Hence why a lot of its plot points are explained better, or at least explained more overtly.
Yeah.
Because Ghost in the Shell is definitely a movie that I think you need to watch multiple times to really get it. And it's because I watched this movie twice, and it definitely fit better on the second time round, because it's like, okay, I know what's happening, I know where the story is going, so now I can just pick up little bits and pieces here and there. I can appreciate little bits of animation that I missed the first time around. And I think that our different opinions on this movie are because we tend to have very different opinions on movies and sort of the ways we approach it. I mean, don't get me wrong, we have our overlaps. Like, neither of us are all that fond of Marvel, but we both really liked Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and stuff like that. But I think that the more slow-paced, methodical, I don't want to say pretentious, but I'm leaning in that direction pretty heavily. I'm implying that here, but I think that is sort of more my wheelhouse than it is for yours.
Yeah, I think we've definitely come out of movies with me saying nothing happened a lot more than we've come out of movies with you saying it. And I've had that issue with a couple of the older movies that we've done now. Yeah. Where it does just feel like there's a whole lot of nothing. And I fully understand letting the story breathe, but if the story's breathing for 95% of your film, then what the hell is it doing for the other 5%?
But that's great. The whole point is watching two people just sit there talking about nothing plot relevant. That's the best part, Grady. That's the point.
No. I have no other response for you other than no.
I really need to get you to play a Yakuza game. I think you'd both love it and hate and just despise it, because it's just action. It's either non-stop balls to the walls, over the top action, or just endless hours of old men in suits sitting in offices talking at each other.
You've already made me hate it.
There's no in between. It's one or the other.
Yeah. I don't want to say I'm impatient, but I guess if you're going with pretentious on your side, I'll use a very negative adjective on my side, and I'll just go with impatient. Where I can let things breathe, I just don't want them breathing all the time, or the whole way through the movie. And different kinds of movies obviously are going to scratch that itch. Like Ghost in the Shell is no Assassination Nation. That was just constant action and shit happening the entire time. And then this one's a bit more of a talky movie, and a bit more of a start reading between the lines and using your brain movie.
Yeah. Like, if Assassination Nation is probably a good point of comparison here. Because for me, Assassination Nation, there was a lot happening. Even when it was just people talking, there was still a lot of like plot and stuff being thrown at you, and a lot of things moving it forward. Whereas Ghost in the Shell, it's, a bit more methodical, maybe even a bit lackadaisical in some scenes. Like, okay, Grady, maybe that boat, the scene where they're on the boat, maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe that didn't have to be as long or as navel-gazing as it was, alright?
Your favorite scene.
Maybe the metaphor of the boat and the diving is a bit on the nose, and it could have been a bit subtler, especially when they outright point out, hey, this is a metaphor, where they're effectively saying, hey, this is a metaphor, this is what it relates to in our current situation. So, okay, maybe in stuff like that, I'll give it to you, but I think I do just prefer, because even though it does have like some loud action scene, like some big action scenes in it,
it definitely does.
It is on average a much quieter and a surprisingly more subdued movie than something like Assassination Nation, which is a lot more, aggressive and in your face about what it's trying to do and say. Whereas something like Ghost in the Shell, it just kind of takes a step back, it throws a lot at you, and it just expects you to kind of catch up and figure things out for yourself. I like the process of being able to work my way through what I've seen and being able to kind of come to those conclusions and figure it and kind of unwrap a movie like it's a bit of a puzzle.
Sounds like you should watch Twin Peaks.
I actually really should. I have the whole thing. I just haven't sat down to watch it.
Yeah, it's definitely that sort of unwrapping a puzzle to figure out the piece. And I guess then if I'm talking about the plot of the second half of the movie, because it does sort of change a little bit through there, the whole middle of the movie through to the ending, since I want to call it an antagonist, but it might not be, the Puppet Master shows up.
It mind wipes several innocent people. I think we can call him a villain.
Could be fine. Is the whole point or the whole plot of that movie that robot brains want to bang?
It isn't quite that, and it is a bit more poetic than that in the movie, Grady. It's a bit more than that. But yeah, robot brains want to bang. All right, fine. What? You're gonna? Okay, fine.
Puppet Master robot wanted to put his brain dong into our major robot. That was it. They were like, I can't die and I can't bang.
It didn't just stop there. It's a bit more than that, okay? There's a newly realized artificial life form trying to, really define itself as a living being, so it wanted to do the two things that it was incapable of doing.
So we're saying then that humans are defined by their ability to bang and die.
Well, that's most living things. No, that's just living things in general.
All right.
That's sort of like the two. Continuation and death. Those are sort of like the two biggest defining features of a living organism.
Because if I had to put all of this movie and I guess put a statement about what this movie was, as you say, there's a lot of Bible quotes, there's a lot of philosophical stuff. This movie to me is just asking the question, what is a human?
Yes, definitely. In fact, I'm pretty sure they ask that question verbatim in the movie multiple times.
Yeah, obviously the major thinking they're not human because all they do have is this little ghost, and then their partner, whose name is escaping me, Atto, thinking that I am a human still. I look like a human. I act like a human. I'm a human. Having that differing of opinion, and then the Puppet Master comes in and is like, y'all want to bang? And then all of a sudden everybody's kind of more human, and the Major's now a child. Yeah, I should stop ragging on this movie.
No, it's fine, because it is definitely an ending which is just like, wait, what? I'm sorry? You want to slow down for it? I mean, we were slowed down for so much. You sure you don't want to just slow down one more time and give me some time to take this in? What? We're ending? Okay, fine. I guess I'll pick up the pieces on my own, I guess.
I fully believed when they were doing their conscience swap stuff and they got shot up by the guns and they exploded into their bits. I fully thought that fade to black was going to be the end of the movie. I was like, this is the kind of movie who will bait me like this, fade to black and end it. And then they came in from the black and Major's a child, and I was more confused than I was before the fade.
Yeah. The fade is probably where they should have ended it. Well, I'm not saying should have, because I do find the idea of a human consciousness and an artificial consciousness merging together to sort of give birth to a new child. I do find that just as like a speculative fiction idea really, really fascinating. But I do wonder whether it honestly might have been worth it to sacrifice that idea to have just left the movie on a much stronger, more ambiguous kind of note, just to make it work better as a film. Sort of like, actually, just to relate it back to Assassination Nation. Remember how they really should have ended that interrogation scene earlier, and it would have made the ending worked a lot better. But you got to admit, Grady, being a robo baby is a lot better than just I did it for the lols. It's a lot better.
Yeah, I think sometimes ambiguity in an ending is good. Yeah. And I think most people nowadays will view ambiguity in an ending to be sequel bait. And a lot of the time it is. But you can also pull off ambiguity in the ending of your movie and not just be sequel bait.
Yeah. Especially since I know that they do. It actually would have worked for the series if they continued to make movies, because there are other Ghost in the Shell movies. However, it's the sequel. It's about the Major, but not this one. It's about like a different Major,
A different one. You don't know
yeah,
her. She went to another school.
Well, I think it's that whole, oh, hey, we have these copies of all these different people, what is a human? It's sort of playing into that. Although I do think the actual Major from this movie does make a cameo appearance in it.
Yeah, I think it does all come back to that question, and I think as much as I'm ragging on the film, it did actually make me think about that thing of, what does make a human.
Yeah.
And ironically, this morning, one of the YouTubers I watched put out a video where they were reacting to a celebrity, I guess, a TikTok star, and they've had so much work done. They've had like 4 boob jobs, 4 butt lifts, had surgery on their parts that I won't mention on the show, and a bunch of other work on them, hip reductions.
Wait, we've said the word tits so many times.
That's true.
I think you can say the word vagina, Grady. That is the official medical term. I think you can say that, Grady.
Point being that they had so much work done, and then the question was like, they don't look human anymore. They look like an alien. And it was like weirdly specific to come off of this film where it's like, they look like humans, but are they? And then you look over to, but this person's definitely a human, but they do not look like one.
Yeah, watching actual people, like actual human beings, hit the uncanny valley makes me profoundly uncomfortable. It's just like, I don't like that.
And it just raised that question in my head a few times, and I've had to think about it while I was working today, of just like, what does make a human? Obviously, we don't have to draw that line just yet, because, our artificial humans are not quite there, but they will be soon, and we will have to make that distinction at some point.
Yeah. Or they'll make them, and then they'll just kill us all before we have time to figure it out. So
that one's probably 100% more likely.
That one might actually happen. The robot might just look at you. It probably won't even be malicious. The robot will just go, let's just start again. You guys had a good run, but I don't know. Let's try Human 2, all right? We'll try Human 2.0 and see how that works out.
Your whole purpose was to make me.
Yeah.
And that is it. But I guess overall, there's been some of these movies we've watched where I've come out disappointed, or I've come out really disliking it. Yeah. This isn't one of those. I think there was definite lowlights, as I said, like things dragging on, or just specific parts of the movie that weren't great, but I didn't hate the movie. I feel like I've ragged on it a lot because it's good to present both opinions, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah. Because it's a film that was definitely quite different from what I was expecting. Because I've watched quite a bit of 90s anime, and usually a lot of 90s anime is balls to the walls, violence, action, gore, sex, all that kind of stuff. Mm. And that was not this movie in any way.
No, this was very much, if this was live action, this exact style, I'm not counting the newer live action one, which I've been told is much more action. If it was that, then this would have been debuting at a film festival. This is a festival movie to me. If it was this pacing, shot for shot, live action. Yeah.
And I think that might honestly be why so many people have a problem with the newer one. That it is, well, at least from what I've heard. I haven't seen it, but it's a lot more action-y. It's a lot more fast-paced. Whereas that isn't really what, I don't think that's what fans of the original want. They like the fact that even though it is clearly a big budget film with high production values, that it still takes the time to really think itself through. And it has some really good action scenes in there, but it knows how to have quiet moments as well. Something that you don't really get from a lot of action movies in general. And I think that's sort of what really makes them, is when you just have scenes of characters, talking to one another. Although in this one, may have leaned in the Matrix route a bit much. They there are a couple of scenes in there where they're talking about like philosophy and stuff, and it's like, I actually don't care. you lost me a while ago. But overall, I did still really enjoy this movie, and it is a kind of film that I see why people love it so much, because movies like this are the exact kind of stuff that film critics absolutely adore and will not shut up about. So, like, it's definitely a film that, like, people who are really into film really like, because they like, oh man, they're really slowing down and they're having these really deep conversations. I like this. And I'm slowly warming up to that kind of stuff, because originally I wasn't like that before. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this rambling. So I just like this movie.
I'll grab you and take
really
you.
Like that. I really like this movie, I suppose is where I'm going.
Yeah, it really does. And start spinning up your facts now as I do my wrap up on my side. It very much is that sort of film festival critic movie. And when you look at stuff nowadays, you can definitely define things as critic movies and mainstream movies. And I guess coming into this, the cover is our main character holding a gun, and you're like, okay, we might have an action film on our hands, we might have something cool here, it's 90s, it's anime, what's gonna happen? And I guess maybe preparing a little bit beforehand may have helped out, but you do just sort of put on the brakes. And you might be going into it expecting that sort of mainstream movie, and instead it's like, no, you're going to a festival/critic movie, and you're gonna like it. You're gonna hear philosophy, and you better start activating your brain to figure out and answer the basic questions like, what is a human? And I guess it could also just be mindset. Like you say, going into it to watch it a second time. If you watch it a second time, you are going to be coming into it with that mindset of more of a analytical mind versus what sort of cool action scenes are we going to have here? Which is what I went into it thinking.
Yeah. And it's definitely a film that is massive tonal whiplash compared to what we watched last week. This has got nothing on HR Puff and stuff, Grady. I was confused in both of these movies for vastly different reasons. I was confused in this one because, there's so much stuff going on here. Wow, I need to process all of this. And I was confused in HR Puff and stuff because I genuinely didn't know what was happening. There was no logic whatsoever.
And this is where my possibly undiagnosed ADHD brain much preferred Puff and Stuff to this film.
What I'm trying to say is that HR Puff and Stuff is the Dark Souls of cult movies, Grady.
Yeah, I forgot we had to jam Dark Souls, but you see, this movie's going to get demonetized because of the amount of times we talked about titties.
Hey, it's either Dark Souls or wrestling. We didn't talk about wrestling at all last episode, so we gotta replace it with something.
That's true. We might have a whole season coming up about wrestling. Who knows?
Yes, or we might just have a season where Wait, no, you've already said we're talking about wrestling. I don't know. I went to repeat exactly what you said, and I don't understand why, Grady.
Well, how about instead of repeating what I said, you talk about some facts about how much money this movie made?
Okay, throwing some facts at you. Trying to find the box office on this movie is a bit confusing because unlike a lot of other anime films at the time and other stuff that we've covered, this was released in multiple different countries practically simultaneously. So I have the budget, which is 330 million yen, right? Mm-hmm. However, that's yen in 1995 money, so who knows what that is now. And it made a box office of 2.3 million. Now, I'm not super down on the conversion rate, but I'm pretty confident that 330 million is significantly more than 2.3 million US. Just throwing it out there.
Who knows, man? But we assume so.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if the thing I'm looking at has been adjusted for inflation. So thanks, people out there, for just making my life difficult. You know what, Grady? Do you want a completely inaccurate modern day equivalent? It would be 330 mil will put the budget at around, 20 million US modern, sure. I guess. I think.
Okay.
But it made 2.3 million. So what I'm getting at is that it made less, okay? It was definitely a bomb at the box office. Because as we've discussed previous, I think a big thing is that this definitely isn't like a mainstream movie. This is definitely something for a bit more niche, which is funny because it's funny in saying that because it actually spawned this massive financially successful franchise. So I don't know, maybe it just got to all the right people, I guess. Either that or weebs over the years just kind of gravitated towards it.
Who knows?
Because I have heard that Ghost in the Shell has a significantly bigger following outside of Japan than does inside of it.
Would you call it a cult following?
Well, that that's actually an interesting word, Grady. Yeah, let's go with that. Why do we trademark that phrase? I think we could really go with that.
Definitely, and I think maybe we should make a pun on couch potato with it.
No, that's just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's stupid. What else you got about this film?
Once the film, so it didn't do very well in theaters, but once it got to the home box office, it absolutely just took off. It made so much bank, Grady. It drew so much money that they went ahead. They made a sequel, Ghost in the Shell: Innocence. Eventually, the original movie would get a modern rework in 2.0. It got its own anime miniseries, standalone complex. And of course the live action movie with Scarlett Johansson. So it did pretty well for itself, all things considered. Despite its initial financial troubles. As we mentioned previously in the podcast, this was a very, very influential film that a lot of it's definitely a film that a lot of people who are into film really love. Hence why you get a lot of praise from a lot of directors have actually heavily praised Mamoru Oshii, the director of this film. People like James Cameron, Steven Spielberg, the Wachowskis. All absolutely love the stuff that he's done. As we said before, this was heavily, almost plagiarism level inspiration for The Matrix.
Not wrong.
Actually, before Grady, what do you prefer, this or The Matrix? I'm curious.
Matrix 1 or the whole franchise?
If I say one, I know you're probably just going to say one, so let's go with the whole franchise.
If I had to rank them all, Matrix 1, then the Matrix franchise, then this.
Okay. Even 4?
Look, I have to average the entire franchise to get that score.
So yes, this is definitely something that picked up a much larger following in later years. I think it's had like a couple of different English dubs. Basset hounds feature surprisingly heavily in this film, and that's purely because the director just really loves basset hounds. He just thinks that they're amazing, so he just puts them in all the things that he works on, which, fair enough. I mean, they're a cute dog, so I can't really blame him for that, I guess.
But I guess as we wrap up our fact-finding mission, and you finish reading off of IMDb, look, we've had Monty Python, which was rough. We had our little special episode, which was rough. We had Puff and Stuff, which was rough. We've had Ghost in the Shell, which is rough. Surely, Campion, surely whoever is in charge of this schedule has decided to put a good movie on next.
Well, that would depend, Grady. What is the next film?
This is... I had to try and pass it to him because I knew he'd forgotten what movie we were watching next. Campion, we are going to be watching Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead? Shaun of the Dead? Was that it?
Yeah, it was. You tried to beat me to it.
Yeah. I think there was a slight delay, so... You know what? You can just edit it. You know what? Let's edit that part out and you can just say it again and pretend that I never got it. Go,
nope.
Go.
Nope, we're keeping it all in. Shaun of the Dead, that's what we're watching next.
Shaun of the Dead, yes. I love that film as a kid, and I hope it holds up. It's got to hold up, right, Grady? I mean, it's Shaun of the Dead. It's Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. How could it not be a really good movie that we're both going to adore?
Fingers crossed.
And just to close out the episode, did you know that Ghost in the Shell is supposed to take place in 2029?
We're only 7 years off.
Yeah, 7 years. And, in years past, I would have joked about that. It's like, oh, it's so close. This futuristic thing's gonna happen. Kind of like Back to the Future 2. But now, as things just keep getting worse and worse, I genuinely think that's where we're gonna end up in a few years, Grady.
Well, there's only one way to find out.
We could only hope that's where we end up with the way things are going.
Fair. Alright, wrap us up with that outro, champion. I'm talking over you now.
Yes, you are.
The whole time I'm going.
Can I talk, please?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, with that positive note to end on, thank you all for joining us here at the Lexicon of Lore. As always, I am Campion, joined by my good co-host Grady, and join us all next time when we cover Shaun of the Dead. Thank you all for listening.